Well, thanks for being here on a cold day to talk about a cold subject. Did that bring up any questions?
Oh, yes.
Well, that's what we're here to do, not to solve them, but to talk about them.
If Jesus' death on the cross atoned for all of our sins for all time,
Mhm.
then as Christians, why do we continue to sin?
Well, it's a good question, isn't it?
If we believe that,
Mhm.
why do we continue to sin?
It's like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, it's already been done, so I'll just live my life the way I want to.
Well, not everybody takes Jesus seriously. But for those who do accept that Jesus did die and atone for their sins, their life changes. They become more in sync with God, more like God, or the way God wants them to be. But it's something that, they have to be serious about. They have to accept that Jesus did that for them and live accordingly.
He also mentioned consciousness. We're conscious of when we sin, and a lot of people aren't. They don't consider what they're doing as wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the people, I think, that haven't been touched by Jesus' atonement.
I have not allowed Jesus to
Haven't
touch
allowed,
them.
yeah. I mean, he's done it for them, but they don't recognize, appreciate it.
Okay, Mike, you're smiling.
Well, no, I'm just trying to think about this, right? I mean, this is one of the hard things about the atonement, like what is it and what does it do, right? And like I grew up in a church that said that sorcery and witchcraft are like evil and wrong. It's like a fundamental presupposition, right? But like the sinner's prayer, God, I've sinned, I've fallen short, I accept Jesus to do this. It's a spell. You got to say the words right and then the magic works. But witchcraft is evil. So I've got this concern about the atonement being a spell, because I don't believe in magic. Not that kind. And I didn't think that there's any fundamental change that happens when I say the magic words. Like, I am still me. And you ask this question, why do we keep on sinning? Well, frankly, because the same reason we sinned in the first place. We thought we were doing the best we could. And I still think I don't wake up in the morning and say, God, I am going to really bring hell to somebody today. I am going to collude with my dark lord, the Satan, and we are going to make life miserable. I mean, I've never had that thought in my life. Normally I'll think like, I am really mad and this has to happen because this is going to like give me the right outcome. And looking back, I can say, God, you were so dumb, but it seemed like a really good idea at the time, like justice or like leveling the scales. Like that seems really good. Or I'm going to teach my kid this really important lesson by screaming at them, because then they'll really get it. Don't pretend you never screamed at your kid. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do because nothing else was working. So we did this thing. And then later, maybe we realized, oh, like that wasn't so good for the relationship. But that didn't stop us from doing it again because the circumstances changed with that. But this time, it's really important. So my relationship with God has not changed my doing the best I can with what I've got. Hasn't changed. I think the goal is to say, how can we get more and do better? Not because we need to earn stuff though, and this is where this gets real fuzzy for me. Honestly. I've met people, and I mentioned this in the men's group yesterday, and it's particularly because I've got an alcoholic in the group. I've met people who said, I was an alcoholic and I accepted Jesus and I'm not an alcoholic anymore. And that's like step one on the road to relapse. When you say you're not an alcoholic anymore, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to start drinking. Like this is like what the big book says, right? That's called being in denial. Oh, but Jesus took that away. I wish. But that's not my experience. I wish exorcism were real because I would be exorcising a lot of demons out of people, never mind my own. Although I would like to have those exorcised, but I don't believe that. I don't think it happens instantly. I think everything worth doing takes time. And if you want to recover from alcoholism, that takes every day of the rest of your life, every single day. And I know lots of Christian people who believe in deliverance and atonement, and 2 or 3 years into it, they can't do it anymore because they say, like, this is so much work. To think about doing this much work every day for the rest of my life sends them right back to the bottle. And that's why alcoholics say 1 day at a time, because if you think about the volume of days you have in front of you and how much work and putting up with this, it's despair. And I would tell you it's the same thing if you have depression. It's a lot of work to get out of the house when you're depressed, to make yourself eat or exercise or socialize, and to think, oh my God, I'm like 40. I'm gonna be doing that for 40 more years. Ratchets up the depression. I don't think God takes that away. I just don't think so. And to be honest, the people who I've met who say God has totally taken that away, I don't trust them. Maybe because I don't have enough faith. But I've been a chaplain at a drug rehab facility. And I've got a kid who has like irregular brain formation. And God's not going to take that away from him. God's not going to like normalize his brain. Not going to happen. So that takes me back to this question about like sin. Like, why do we keep sinning? Well, because we pick up burdens. Like we just do, and we misfire.
And we're human.
And I
not
want to,
perfect.
my big push on him and everything in the book is his whole fundamental presupposition is human condition is bad. I don't know if you heard that. This is to fix us because we inherently have a distorted relationship with God. Is that true?
I don't, not in the beginning, we don't. Well, I don't know, children are born, you don't hear a lot about it. But the fact that so many women smoke marijuana especially during the first trimester, they are now saying that children are born with different things. And of course, COVID has affected things, and the other drugs have affected things too. And what causes a schizophrenic and so on. So those people that are born that way really in a way are helpless until they get treatment or maybe some help, but they may never get it. So to what degree are they guilty if they continue, not knowing that they really didn't have a good chance when they first started, But to me, the atonement thing is not, so, it's not, doesn't have, I don't know, the atonement thing is that what God wanted, I think, and I think I've heard, was that he wanted us as a people who would walk with God. That meant, just be as aware of God as I am of Kay over there, and Susan here, and Valerie there, and Ellen there, and Jonelle there, but we live in a society, well, the people in the early days, they had such hard times, and even the wars that we've been through and all the losses and what we're going through now is, that's hard to deal with. And a lot of times we are not equipped or prepared to deal with those things. So we learn on the job, so to speak. But so I feel like that like people our age now. One of the things I'm grateful for old age is that it made me finally sit down and shut up and really pay attention more. And I've done it all my life, but I could be distracted and off, something else. But the thing is this, now we can really focus on things. We can look back and see the blessings that God has given us and the things that we did wrong, and we can make atonement for those things if necessary, if we need to, etc. So to me, it's just that the missing element for people in general, especially in this day and time, is there's just not that connection with God that we need to have. Now, we here are careful about what we do, aren't we? Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, but I mean, we have wisdom. We have some wisdom. But I don't know whether that's making any sense or not. But anyway, to me, it's just that working with God, living with God, loving God is a living relationship. In other words, you got to be aware of it and pay attention to it.
So I have knowledge that if I eat that cookie, it's gonna put calories on me that I don't need. And yet I eat that cookie.
Do you want to know why you do that?
Yes.
Because we're hardwired as mammals to want to accrue things like sugar and fat, because that's a survival instinct that is just in our DNA.
Huh.
And then we have this other, bioengineered foods, like they take advantage of our brain. Like, why do people eat fast food? It's so unhealthy because it speaks to their brain. It's like high calorie, right? This is not controversial, what I'm saying. Like, even if you work at Wendy's, you would say, yep, that's right. That's why we give your brain what it wants. Your brain wants really high calorie food, and it's really attracted to things like sugars and fats because what do you know? Like, those are high calorie food. And if you're like in a savanna or you're going hiking, like, you need that. But then we have this other thing, right? Like, so our brains really want that, sometimes to our own detriment.
Right.
Because as hunter-gatherers, right, you feast or famine. So you would load up, right? And then we have this other weird stuff with food, where food meets a biological urge, but we also use it to meet an emotional urge. Let's not pretend like nobody stress eats. People do weird stuff with food under stress because it's so primal and speaks to this need we have that's older than our emotions are. Is that wrong that we do that? It's just who we are. That said, right, we have an opportunity to say, like, this is not going to meet my emotional needs. Or, yeah, look, I do find myself really wanting this food. Like, it makes my brain feel really good. But I know that there's more than that.
Well, and I feel really good when I make the choice to have that apple instead of that cookie, even though I still want that cookie. But
see,
I will sometimes make the decision to take the apple instead.
This is where I think we get a little wild, and it's important in the atonement. Is eating sinful?
No.
Is eating high calorie food sinful?
No.
It just can have consequences that aren't great.
Right.
So we could make it like black and white demons and angels stuff, but it's just what we do. Like, you can't not eat, you'll die, right? So like, we have to do it. And again, like, you can call it I'm going to call it a conspiracy. There's a corporation conspiracy to produce food that hits all of our triggers. That's in their best interest. It will sell more, and it will make us feel really great in the moment. So in some ways, it's a win-win. It's just, though, that there's other consequences. I meet people who say abortion's always wrong. And some of those people are morbidly obese. And my question is, what's the difference between you killing yourself actively, which you're doing, and a lady making a choice about a thing that's not actually fully formed or alive? This is where atonement gets dicey, right?
Okay.
We could call gluttony a sin, but
Right.
let's be honest, sin, it's not like making God mad. It's just not actually meeting all of our needs.
Right.
It's meeting one desire to the point that it is creating new needs in us. So is God like, if you eat 2 extra cookies, I'm going to send you to hell? I think it's more like, that's not going to work.
Right.
I mean, I get why you're trying that, but it's not going to work.
Not good for you. So one of the things he said in the film was that about Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Okay, being the Day of Atonement.
Covering over.
So in biblical times, if a citizen commits a crime, they are punished. Okay, why don't they like stick him in jail or something until Yom Kippur, and then their sins are forgiven?
Because what happens is the same today, right? Like, we don't have an ecclesiastical court that says, Susan, when you ran that child over in the street, you really only sinned against God. We don't have that court, and I hope we never do.
Right.
We have a civil court that says, you've done these things, you've ruptured a relationship with another human being, and now you need to try to make recompense.
Right.
And we also perceive there's something greater than what happened between you and that one child and one family that actually can affect the whole community. And we have Yom Kippur for that.
Okay.
Yom
okay.
Kippur says what we do does not just affect us. So sometimes we think it just affects me. And Yom Kippur is the recognition that whatever I do necessarily affects everybody else in the community. So I can handle the personal stuff one-on-one. The community stuff, we got to get together to handle that.
Okay, okay,
I actually think that's right.
I understood that.
Right? The stuff I do is greater than, certainly, if I have a harsh word with you, atonement is making an apology that's meaningful, recognizing the hurt and trying not to do it again. Yeah, we can work that out. But my harsh words actually tend to have an effect on people other than you and I, whether they heard them or not. There's just like this sort of greater community life to deeds. I mean, and part of what we've done, I think, is we've drank the Kool-Aid of individualism so much that like we just do the civil atonement and we don't recognize like, no, that has an effect on the fabric, right? The fabric of the rest of the community. Like there's these big studies about suicide. I'm just hurting myself, but you know, it actually, suicide comes in waves and there's like copycats. One person doing it inspires other people to say like, oh, like maybe that is a good way to handle my stress.
That happened at Clear Lake High School.
It happens everywhere. When there's one suicide, there's often
There
another.
were 3, and that was kind of a group of friends.
Because it gives embodiment to an idea many people have already had, and they just thought that's too extreme. I can't do it. Well, someone else has done it. I'm not going to call that wrong, like God's going to kill you. What I want to say is like our actions have social consequences, sometimes bigger than we can even recognize. So what do we do with that? That's why we have the day of covering it over.
Okay.
Now, the guy says in the video that atonement's really based in like killing an animal. And like, we just need to like, in some ways I thought he said, we just need to like get over that. And I'm going to say, I just think that was wrong and stupid. Like I understand like, hey, I need to like pay back. So like a life for a life. Then you just have more death in the world. So like, I'm just going to reject that. I get ancient people were all into that. And modern people are into that too. I just don't think God's into that.
Yeah, you mentioned the problem with the sin and the fact that we are sinners and we're born into sin. I think maybe he didn't exactly say that, but that's the kind of the concept I got that they feel, that group. And I totally reject that. Anybody that's ever held a newborn baby cannot say this thing is born sinful.
Yeah.
You know, and so somewhere along the way, we, being humans, we do things, like you say, the best I could at the moment. but it breaks a relationship, and somebody once said atonement at one meant.
Yeah.
And I've kind of held on to that because it seems like that's the whole point, is to restore the relationship between myself, God, and others.
Mhm.
And so I can't see where original sin falls into that at all.
No, it seems really tough. And I could say we're all born in sin with the understanding that we all have natural proclivities toward picking up certain burdens. So if I asked you the difference between being stubborn and persevering in my own head, they only differ on whether I like the outcome. So if you
Oh.
do something and you never stop, and I like how it worked out, it's because you persevered. But if you do something over and over again and I don't like it, it's because you're stubborn. And what's really the difference is just the outcome. Now, look, I have some real strong perseverance in me. That's shadow side of stubbornness. And I think I'm hardwired for it. I don't think I just thought as a kid, you know what? I'd like to really be stubborn and persevere. And it's a great gift. Perseverance is a gift. But the shadow side is being stubborn. And the way stubbornness is expressed in the Bible is hardening your heart. And there are times I harden my heart. But there are times in which hardening my heart is a gift to the world. So if I took away the whole ability to harden my heart, the world would be at a loss. However, again, there's times where hardening my heart hurts me and those people that I love. So in that sense, I'm born in sin. I have a proclivity to persevere and be stubborn. And it can be a gift and a grace, or it can be really unfortunate. Does God want to take my gift away from me? No, God gave it to me. What God would enjoy is if I could really just decrease the length of my shadow side, because I would enjoy life more. And so would the people I love. So is there a spell to do that, or is there a way of life to do that?
I have a brother who's mentally challenged. And if I suggest to him a different way of doing something, no, I like, and I tell him he's stubborn. And it's that he's afraid of change. He doesn't like change. And so he's going to do it the way he's always done it so that he doesn't have to change. And he gets tickled that I call him stubborn. He says, well, my dad was stubborn. So
Yeah.
I come by it honestly. But, I never thought of that as the other side of perseverance. And I believe he is persevering to protect himself.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought of it that way. Thank you.
This is where I really want to challenge the fundamental presupposition that we're born in some kind of breach. Like we're born with individual gifts and proclivities. God gave us that stuff. And I think actually sometimes we overweigh this and say like, well, I'm just a such and such person. That can be a gift to the world. Like there's nothing you have that cannot be a gift to the world. So to take that away would be a loss for the world. The question is like, how do we live into it without living into the shadow side? And, I don't know. I really challenge the idea here that like, hey, I'm trying to get the exact wording. I thought I wrote it down. We don't have a connection with God until we do this thing.
Distorted relation.
Distorted. Sometimes I think maybe the thing that's most wrong with us is that we think there's something wrong with us. I'm going to say that again so you
say
can
that
hear it.
again.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the thing that's wrong with us is that we think there's something wrong with us.
Well, yeah, I can see that, that thinking that, there's something wrong and, when there really isn't.
I don't think that we're called to live into some sort of like arrogance or narcissism or anything like that. But like some people just like aren't funny. Like they want to be, and they're just not funny. Is there something wrong with them? No, they're just not funny. Like you don't have to be funny. Like you don't have to meet every single one of my needs for me to be in communion with you. I was talking about this with somebody else, like one of the worst things I see in marriages is when one partner expects the other one to meet every single one of their needs. I mean, that's a recipe for just sadness and divorce, to be honest, either one, right? Because look, my partner cannot meet all of my needs. And I just need to be honest about that. She meets a lot of them. Some less regularly than I'd like, and others more regularly than I would wish. And in others, we get the sweet spot, right? This is no mystery, by the way. This isn't even limited to marriage. This is friendship, right? No friend will do everything you need because they have their own needs. Well, that's why we need more than one friend, right? I mean, we do. That's why we need to have friends, even when we're married, who are not our spouses, because they might be able to meet some of our needs. Is that sinful? I just think it's inherent. Well, the fact that we need other people means there's something wrong with us. I don't think so.
No man is an island, no woman is an island. Thomas Merton.
That's right. So like, forgive me for pushing so hard, not on the atonement, but what underlies it. I just, for so many years, I've been taught like there's something really, really wrong with us. And what is it? Yeah, like we make bad choices. Okay, we do. We make really great choices. And the ability to choose, I wouldn't want to lose that. I would like the ability to make bad choices. I would. Sometimes I wish I made fewer of them. But I like being able to pick. Because that means when I want to do something, I've really put my will behind it. So what's the rupture in our relationship with God that we can choose? And sometimes we don't always pick the thing that would be best for everybody. Put this way, I guess I'm starting to wonder, is the cross a thing that God needed, or is the thing that we did and later we found value in?
That's a good question.
There's people I know, and my son's one of them, who when things start to go really well, like let's pretend we got a really good week, the next week it's going to be full of self-sabotage. You're happy with me? I'll see if you love me when you see how bad I am. I'm sure he doesn't think that, but I can tell you he does it. Or did it. I don't know about now. We're working that out. Self-sabotage happens actually a lot of people more than they realize. Things are like really good and we're like, oh, this is too good, I don't deserve this, so I'll whatever. Or you only love me because of what I do, so I'll really show you. Do people really think that? Sometimes, but I do think it's a pattern of behavior, right? Does that mean they have a demon? Or does that mean they have anxiety because they've been hurt before? So let me walk through the major models of atonement.
Before you put up the subject, I don't know, I don't understand the demon thing in us. I don't believe demons live in us, but it's so frequently talked about that there's a demon.
Yeah.
I know that in the Bible they exorcise demons. But do you really, and even today, priests will come in and exorcise demons.
I can do an exorcism if somebody asks, but I don't have the right. The bishop has the right, and if I do it, I have to fast for so many days. I have to go to confession, and at the end of the rite, I have to burn it. I'm not allowed to keep the rite. So I'll get it on a piece of paper, and I'll do it, and I'll burn it and bury the ashes. This is requisite. I've never done one, and I'm not going to say I won't, but I'm really not interested in doing them.
So, do you think there are demons living in people?
No, I don't think so. But I do think there are unclean spirits, and I've got unclean spirits in me. An unclean spirit is a tendency to do something that is destructive.
Right, but that's not a demon.
No, and I think because demon is a Greek word that means unclean spirit. We left it in Greek because we put some spirituality behind it and like embodied it in like a red body with a forked tail and claws and stuff like this. But that's not biblical. There's unclean spirits, and then there's messengers from God. Messengers, that's the word angel. But a messenger could be youth, could be Martin Luther King Jr., could be the US Post Office. I mean, messenger just means messenger. When you hear heavenly host, now you're thinking of a supernatural thing, right? But Gabriel, the archangel, could have been a human being who gave Mary a message. Didn't have to have wings. Heavenly host, scary as hell. Every time they show up, they say, don't be afraid. They do it because everybody was afraid because they had 4 heads and they were covered with eyeballs. That picture of the ark, woefully inadequate. 6 wings, 2 cover their face, 2 cover their genitals, and 2 they fly with. And again, they have the face of an eagle, an ox, a lion, and a human being, and they're covered with eyeballs. You didn't see that in the Sistine Chapel. You see like cute babies, which I think speaks to our recognition that human beings are born just fine.
Human
They're
beings are born what?
Fine,
Fine.
angelic, chubby kids. That's our picture of angels. And it's so funny that we'll say there's something wrong with kids, but then we deify them as angels. Now, in the Bible, heavenly beings are scary, like really scary. Unclean spirits, there's not any red-tailed things. There's people who have epilepsy. There's people who hemorrhage and have like vaginal bleeding. That's an unclean spirit. I mean, we could say like that's a genetic condition, or we could say like, hey, like you've got, you know, you're being threatened with toxmosis or whatever it is, right? So I don't want to say that people said, oh, a demon is anything we don't understand. I don't think it's that. I think like things are unclean when they seem to have some like otherworldly power. So like the Nuremberg rally, I don't know if you've ever seen it on tape, like all these Nazis goose stepping and burning books. Something really powerful about it. It's mesmerizing, actually, and like Nazi psychologists designed it to do that. Because if you don't find that compelling to look at, I don't even know how to talk to you, because I find it really compelling. The colors, the Nazi colors, they're very primal. Red, white, and black are like really strong in our brains, right? Really strong. You look at the other soldiers, the Allied soldiers, forgive me for saying this, the Nazis had the best uniforms, right? I mean, they knew how to dress. And they did it on purpose because they're speaking to something very primal. Now, is that wrong? Obviously, the ends they put it to are wrong. But we're just hardwired for that stuff. Parades are mesmerizing for us. When like you have 10,000 soldiers goose stepping in tandem, that's even more powerful than the Rockettes because there's only like 20 of them, right? I mean, I'm being serious about this, right? Totally serious, even though it's kind of funny, right? But there, like you see that. And then like there's this word unclean spirit, like there are all these individuals, but then there's also like this corporate identity that is greater than any one person. And it's like spiritual because it's greater than one person. In the Nazi case, it's an unclean spirit. You know that because of its fruits. But the stuff works, right? The stuff works. I've got unclean spirits in me, like, hey, in situation Q, I am going to burn a bridge. Like if somebody comes to me, I'm going to burn a bridge. And I know that about myself, and I'll still do it. And that's
an unclean spirit.
because I know it is not giving me life. I actually would like to get rid of it. But how do you get rid of an unclean spirit? Oh, I just wish this part of me was gone. It's not been effective for me. Alcoholics can tell you that their disease is an unclean spirit, but it's not like they can just turn a knob and it's gone. The exorcism takes the rest of their life.
Okay, so that analogy, yeah.
I think
So
the
it's,
language is really insightful that way.
Well, I just, when I read the Old Testament about the unclean spirits getting in the pigs and they jumped off the cliff, etc. I just thought it was things they didn't understand, like epilepsy and neurological illnesses, crippling diseases. They just didn't understand it, so they called it an unclean spirit.
I think there's another word for unclean spirit too, which is like all of the isms in the world. Like I would tell you misogyny is an unclean spirit. And most people who suffer from misogyny don't even know they have it. Or if they do, they say it's just natural and normal. But misogyny so permeates our culture. I'm talking to a bunch of women. But misogyny so permeates our culture. What's the remedy for it? It's not like there's a quick fix. And I know some really intelligent, lovely human beings who are still misogynists. And that does not take away that they're lovely and intelligent human beings, but there's something really unclean about that misogyny. I would tell you racism is an unclean spirit because no one person can overcome it. And in that sense, we're born in sin because we're born into an environment that's saturated with misogyny and racism. We are. Is it irrecoverable? No. Does that make a baby a sinner? No, but it's a burden you're born into.
Yeah.
And this is where sin as burden is really helpful for me instead of sin as blemish. Sin as burden. So then you get into the atonement theories. I'll run through them real quick. He left out one that's really important. It's called recapitulation. Recapitulation says, hey, we have this story about Adam. He made a mistake, and now there's all these consequences. So if one person could kind of take us down a path, well, one person could maybe correct the path. So Jesus is like represents a new creation, a new opportunity to make decisions, not to change our inherent ontology, but we don't have to do that. That's recapitulation. Oldest theory. The next one's ransom. And ransom is, hey, you got a hostage, I got to pay you, God will pay any price. And it gets real ugly later when people start saying, well, who held Jesus hostage? And how did they get him? And what did they demand? And this is where we got these ideas like the devil took the world hostage. But that's not original. In fact, that's, frankly, it's like poppycock. How does a created being have the lease on the world? That's nonsense to me, right? Like if there is a devil, God made the devil. So how could the devil have any power over the creator? I mean, it's just totally nonlinear, but we've bought that hook, line, and sinker, that if there's a ransom, there has to be a captor. Or it could just be an analogy. How far will God go for human beings? Really far. Hopefully we all agree. We're precious enough to God that God will really go to work for us. Not because God's mad, though. You see, this is where we mess up the ransom thing. It's not that God's mad. We're that precious. So God will do whatever it takes. Then we get this idea of substitution. We read this in Anselm, right? Like, hey, God's justice is so perfect, somebody's got to pay. And hey, our deeds are so bad, we can't even pay it. So there's got to be, somebody else to pay the price. So we need a substitute. That's the idea behind animal sacrifice. Like, hey, I did a bad thing. I deserve to die because I did a bad thing. I don't really know why we think we deserve to die because we did a bad thing. But instead of killing me, you can kill my donkey. And then a life got taken. I get it. Like if you accept that a life has to be paid, then maybe it makes sense. But why would a life have to be paid? Like if God's all powerful, can't God just forgive you because God wants to? That would be unjust. Well, yeah, it would be. That's why it's called forgiveness, right? Like forgiveness isn't predicated on justice, it's predicated on grace. Like, and so why does God need an eye of nude and a wing of bat and like a Jesus on the cross to work the spell of forgiveness? God should just be able to do it. That's what I think. But I understand substitution's a big deal and it's very primal when a firefighter goes into a home and rescues somebody, whether they die or not, but especially if they die, we're like, oh my God, like you paid the ultimate price. What a gift to humanity and my family, right? Like we recognize that. So that's okay with me. But then you get to the underlining bit, it's because we're inherently bad and because God demands to kill us forever because we're bad. That just seems really hard. Like, I'm not even like that. When my kids do something wrong, I don't want to punish them forever. I'd just like them to learn. That would be great. So why would God be worse than me?
Why would God want to substitute an innocent animal?
This I didn't get. I get why we want to.
Yeah, why we want to, but it makes it appear God wants it.
So I don't mind saying, and look, this makes me maybe very liberal, but I think it makes me realistic. Like, because something's in the Bible doesn't mean I got to do it anymore.
So it was the culture then.
I get what's behind the thinking. I get what's behind the thinking. I just don't think it's our best thinking as human beings that something has to die.
I know, something innocent.
Something innocent. In fact, like you can read in the Brothers Karamazov, Fyodor Dostoevsky, he makes this challenge that if one innocent died for all human beings before and after, God is absolutely unjust. Because punishing an innocent is the definition of injustice.
Yeah.
And
That's
God made the animals that they kill for the blood as well.
But God also did away with that too. But, I guess they still, well, I know that there are some religious groups that are more, do still do primitive things. But
I
I'm
mean-
not talking about Christian.
I would tell you that if we call the thing an altar and we've sacrificed Jesus on it again and again, like we're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
We're sacrificing not just an innocent animal, but an innocent human being that we also say was God. And then we're saying this was a good thing. I'm not sure it was a good thing. He said it's called Good Friday. Actually, it was originally called Black Friday.
Yeah, I caught that too. when you
Yeah,
said that.
Good Friday came like a long time later. And like, look, I think what's good, what we extrapolate from the deed is God submitted to our worst choices because God loves us that much. But I don't think that what we did was good. And I'm not sure, like I say, that if we were like, yeah, you know what, Jesus, actually, you probably got some good ideas. Like, we should just do that and let's just get along. I don't think we'd be worse off. Like, again, does God need to die at the hands of human beings in order to understand what it's like to be a human being? Because I'm probably not going to die at the hands of other human beings. Probably not. Some people do. Probability is real low, right? So
Bless her heart.
hardwired.
It's not
It's
wanting
not
to
because she's a sinner. It's because I've trained her to want human touch.
Oh, I thought she was dreaming.
So no, oh, well, wish. No, that's a different kind of noise. So I mean, you know, when you think about this, really, like, so yes, like God shows us how far God will go. God will even suffer our worst decisions
So you're saying it was our decision
to kill Jesus.
to kill Jesus?
I think so.
It's
Never
our
thought about
decision to
that.
do what?
To kill Jesus, not God's. It was our decision to kill Jesus.
And I would say we even thought that was a really good idea, which is why in Luke you get Jesus saying, God, they don't know what they're doing. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They think they're doing something really good right now, and they're wrong.
Yeah, but we weren't even there when Jesus was crucified, so how can we?
We don't read the Bible as a historical book. We read the book as how do we resonate with the story. If Jesus came to world today, the first people to kill him would be the church. I mean, let's be
Yeah,
honest.
right, yeah.
Because he challenged what we're used to. Well, I think Dostoevsky thought so too. Actually, he imagines this scene where Jesus comes again and the Inquisition kills him. Because it would hurt the church if he was around. And the church is like God's gift to the world. I know that sounds nuts, but it sounds crazy when you say it that way. But I am afraid that a lot of what we've been conditioned into spiritually is based on these things. And I don't want to say that they're wrong. I'm just not sure they're necessary. I'm not sure they're necessary.
So why did God send Jesus?
Well, I can't tell you why exactly, but if I think about it, maybe God really enjoys human beings and thought that would be nice to be a human being and to be a really good human being. And
Show the way.
well, and that's part of the moral exemplar that Peter Abelard said. God came to show us how to live. We chose to put that to death. And we didn't get the last word, God does. But what if we had said, you know, Jesus, you're right. Let's do it different. Would God's mission have not been accomplished? It just would have been accomplished differently, right? So what's great is God can pull meaning out of tragedy, but did God think, oh, I can't wait to go die? Or did God think, I'm really gonna like fully indwell my creation?
But wasn't it stated before Jesus came that a Messiah would come and would die? No, it didn't say
No.
that.
No, the expectation was the Messiah would come and lead them to political independence. What we read in Isaiah about the suffering servant, again, that's about the nation of Israel when Isaiah wrote it, and that they would suffer in order to be a blessing to other people. Well, I believe in that because, hey, sometimes I sacrifice things and it feels really good to sacrifice them, but if I really think about it, I gave something up. And I didn't have to, I chose to do that. And life came out of it and it was great. But I gave something up. And so the people of Israel are called to give stuff up. And Christian people are called to give stuff up or other people. I don't know anybody who does it all the time because, if you give up everything, you have nothing left. And you can't give what you don't have. So you got to have something to share. But I do think to support life, like, hey, if I really want to like be an empathetic parent, I have to give up that I'm always right. Otherwise, you're crying, I don't like that, you're wrong. You did this thing and it's like not what I did, it's wrong. I have to give up that not everybody does it the way I do. Mike, well, that's easy to do. Not always. And I have to do it. I have to choose to do it. If I don't choose to do it, am I going to go to hell? I don't know, but I'm going to be real lonely because I won't have any empathy. And that's a choice we make. We do it, I think, because it's better for us. Now, some people say, and I think this is compelling, although because God knows everything, like God already got this, but like, hey, one of the benefits to us about the incarnation and crucifixion is we understand, A, God loves us enough to join us. B, like, hey, God experienced the death we die. So when we die, God gets that too. Like God's not afraid of dark places or lonely places like we are, because God did that, right? And hey, like God loved us enough to submit to our bad choices. I think I get all of that out of the crucifixion story. And there's
Explain the lesson that he, and not
Well-
just submit to our choices.
and I think you get this in any time when you have a long relationship. I almost know what my wife or children are going to do in many situations. Like I'll give them the choice and I already know what they're going to pick. And I give them the choice not so they can pick the wrong thing and disappoint me, but so that they can maybe pick something lovely and I can earn trust in them. But like I know what my wife's going to do when we go to try to buy a new car. And I still go with her. She might surprise me, or like, hey, I know what she's going to do and I still choose to be with her. So like I put up with that. In fact, I actually embrace those really important to me. And so God knows we're not going to make the best decisions, and like God's not put off by that. I can't believe you killed me. I mean, maybe, or like, I thought you were going to do that. And I thought I'd give this a try anyway. And my love for you has not gone away because you killed me. That's not a historical story. That's a story I resonate with. Does that make sense? Would I ransom my kids? I mean, would I pay any price? I don't know. I'd pay a big price. I know that. And then in the particulars, I'd have to compute. And normally you say like, I'd never give my dog surgery if they tore their ACL. And then it happens. And then you're like, well, hell, will I ransom you from death or not?
4 times in my case.
Ransom speaks to me that way. Ransom speaks to me. It's expensive. And how far will love go? And look, sometimes love says I have to stop. I got to stop here, not because I don't love you, but I love other people and I got to care for them too, right? But that idea that I'll pay a heavy price for somebody I love makes sense to me. Recapitulation. Hey, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Okay, look, when you get a second chance, mean, the biggest mistake we can make from a mistake is to make it again. If we make a mistake and we learn from it, I'd call that a gift. So that's what recapitulation's about. Hey, when you're in this place again, do it different, like give it a different try. I find that to be very helpful as a model, right? Give it another try, learn from your mistakes. Seems really good. I get the idea that justice needs balance. And hey, I can't always balance stuff. If I kill you, I can't give you your life back. I can pay money to your heirs, but that's not an even exchange, right? So there is something bigger than just straight recompense. I get that idea in justice. I do. Jesus came to show us the way. I sure hope so. Most of the stories in the gospel are about not him dying, but him living and teaching us how to live. So if the only thing that mattered was that he died on a cross, that's one chapter. Why do we have the other 27? I hope you hear what I'm saying, right? Like there's pieces of each thing that's actually really beautiful. There's this idea we read that there's powers in the world that conspired to kill Jesus. Well, yeah, there sure are. Those powers are still there, like greed, right? And the desire to dominate. And you dress different from me, so you're wrong. Like, I don't like that much diversity. Like this stuff still happens. Satanic, in the sense that it like divides us, right? And it denigrates other human beings. That stuff is absolutely satanic. Like, it's unclean and wrong. And God would like to conquer that. I believe that. That sounds right to me. I just don't think we have to share all the other presuppositions of that. We're born sinners and we're evil, and God really is put out to do this stuff for us. And God said, like, oh, God, I'll have to die to fix you. I guess I will. But if you don't accept me in a magical spell ritual, I'll send you to hell forever. I know I'm kind of caricaturing it, but I don't think I'm actually caricaturing it. I think I'm describing like where the spirituality takes us. What I like about Eucharistic prayer too is that Jesus was a perfect sacrifice for the whole world. Even people that don't want it. I guess that makes me a universalist. But is God's grace predicated on whether I accept it or not? I mean, is your love for your child predicated on whether they accept it or not? No, you love them no matter what they do with it, don't you? Sometimes the way you love them is they make you really mad the rest of your life, which is proof that you love them. Because if you didn't, you'd be indifferent. God's not indifferent to us. I'm sorry, I got into my atonement sermon.
It was a good one.
Well, we can talk about this in